Because if you think about it for a minute, what if all of that nostalgia that we chase as collectors and as enjoyers of retro content, what if all those action figures and all those video games and all those VHS tapes did more than just give us a good fun feeling? What if they actually had an impact on our overall well-being? Hey everyone, my name is Perry, and welcome back to the cassette phase. So I hope that you're all doing well. Today's video is one that I've been wanting to make since I first started this channel. So I'm really glad that we're able to finally get to it today. As you may or may not know, I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor. And in my day job, mental health is at the forefront of many of my responsibilities. And I don't have my own private practice or anything like that. But I'm in kind of a unique role at a major corporation where I oversee the coordination of the various mental health program offerings that we provide to our clients. And for any of you who stick around till the very end of each video, I always remind you to remember to relax and to enjoy life and to be kind. And all of that kind of comes from the intersection of my professional life and the part of my life that I share with you all the time. You know, the retro collector who loves talking about memories of the 80s and the 90s. So we're going to explore that intersection today and talk about nostalgia as it relates to mental health. You know, why do we reminisce? Why do we collect vintage items? Why do we watch old TV shows and movies? And how does all of this impact our mental health? Now, this isn't going to be a clinical discussion by any means. Although, I will be referencing some studies and providing some citations, which can be found in the description. But you're here to be entertained, right? So we're going to be sure to keep things fun and entertaining as we talk through this stuff. So, if you've ever been curious about nostalgia or escapism, or why we feel the way we do about our childhood experiences, but then you also like things framed through a fun pop culture lens, come hang out. Now, let's start with just a little bit of housekeeping here really quickly. For my credentials, as I mentioned, I am nationally certified in the US as a rehabilitation counselor. But none of the things we talk about today should be taken as therapeutic treatment in any way. The thoughts shared here are based on my own personal experiences and my own interest in nostalgia and mental health. The content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. And if you are experiencing any kind of emotional distress, please contact a qualified mental health provider or access one of the resources that I've placed in the description. Okay, so if you've been with the cassette phase for any amount of time, you know that we're all about sharing fond memories of the past, framed through our fun talks about cartoons and movies and video games and vintage toys and everything in between. But when I'm working my day job, I'm not thinking about DVD box sets or retro sneakers or my top 10 favorite toy commercials of the 80s. Well, maybe I am a little bit sometimes, but I'm also thinking about mental health. Because if you think about it for a minute, what if all of that nostalgia that we chase as collectors and as enjoyers of retro content, what if all those action figures and all those video games and all those VHS tapes did more than just give us a good fun feeling? What if they actually had an impact on our overall well-being? And that's really what we're exploring today. How the memories from our past might help us navigate our present. so that when we do rewind, we think about how to rewind with purpose. So let's start with some foundational stuff here. What even is nostalgia? That word might feel cozy to you, or bittersweet, or even a little bit sad. But that word, nostalgia, it has a history. Now, you know we love the 80s around here. But for right now, we're talking about the 1680s. 1688 specifically, when a Swiss physician named Johann Hofer coined the term nostalgia to describe homesickness for mercenaries who were far from home. And it was actually considered a disease at the time. And now fast forward to today, and psychologists view nostalgia as a mostly positive emotional resource. Let's hear that again. A mostly positive emotional resource as opposed to a disorder. And a more standard definition describes nostalgia as a sentimental longing or a wistful affection for the past. Now, I think we can all relate to that, right? And as viewers of this channel and other channels in our retro family here, we seek this feeling out. But generally speaking, nostalgia can be triggered in a variety of ways. It can be sensory cues, like music or smells, or the look or feel of an old toy. These hit home for me personally all the time. Like when I hear a certain Whitesnake song, I'm immediately transported back to 1989, my friend's dad's garage while he was blasting a song out of an old boombox while working on his classic Corvette. And that scented plastic of a strawberry shortcake toy, yeah, that takes me back to digging through my childhood friend's toy box, searching for anything that wasn't a Barbie or a My Little Pony. But it can also occur during life transitions, moving, a career change, or periods of especially high stress. And if I think back on it myself, maybe becoming a father, which has been one of the best experiences of my life to this point, could have been a big enough life change that it sparked some of this nostalgia that I still seek out to this day. And it can be brought on by some of the not so fun parts of life, like social disconnection and loneliness. But all that to say, nostalgia isn't necessarily about just missing the past. Oftentimes, it's our mind's way of reaching out for something stable, something comfortable, something familiar, when life is changing all around us. Now, to me, this is the really cool part. That nostalgic feeling, you know the one. We've talked about it countless times here on this channel. It isn't just a nice feeling. It actually has measurable benefits. In a 2013 study by Routledge and some others, nostalgia was found to improve mood, increase social connectedness, and help people who may be at psychological risk. And the American Psychological Association noted that the feelings associated with nostalgia can actually reduce loneliness and boost meaning in one's life. And another study found that nostalgia isn't always just about looking backward, as we might think, but it can actually motivate future-oriented behavior. And I encounter that very thing in my own life all the time. For example, when I see a picture of my childhood home and I place myself back in that front yard, throwing the football around and diving on the ground and pretending that I'm Jerry Rice, I think about that kid. and I think about how what I'm doing in life right now would make that kid happy, given everything that we've been through. And that makes me want to continue driving forward and getting better and continuously growing into the adult that 10-year-old me was always hoping for. So yeah, it's not just about pining and longing, but nostalgia, when accessed appropriately, which we're going to talk about, can be a bridge between who we were and who we're becoming. But for some balance here, nostalgia doesn't always mean safety or comfort. For trauma survivors, for example, some of those triggers that we talked about before can resurface painful losses and unmet expectations. And what's interesting about that, anecdotally, is that I've heard from several different people in several different settings that people like us had to have endured some kind of emotional trauma and that we're clinging to our childhoods as some type of result of that trauma. Now, I can't say with any certainty that I experienced some significant trauma myself, which may have contributed to all of this, but let's get into that a little bit in the next section where I share some of my own story. So, as with many of you, I'm sure, I grew up in a world of Saturday morning cartoons and action figures that I would play with in the grass and the dirt, and pixelated adventures on the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. And when life wasn't going so smoothly, I found solace in those items, even though there's no way I could have fully realized it at the time. And of course, life wasn't always peachy. Like many, many kids in the 80s, my parents were divorced. And yeah, it was super common. And yeah, it meant 2 Christmases, right? But it also meant, as a 7-year-old kid, witnessing adults arguing somewhat severely. Never physically, but loud and verbal, and hoping that it wasn't so loud that it was going to wake up my then 3-year-old brother. And 2 Christmases, sure, but it also meant awkward curbside exchanges, trading cars as you switched from one family to another. But there was still joy to be found in these situations. I can recall a year very early on where I spent Christmas Eve with my dad's side of the family in Hot Springs, Arkansas, before loading up and heading over to Little Rock to spend Christmas Day with my mom's side. Well, who went with me on that hour or so drive? A little plastic figure from the original Ninja Turtles line, a samurai rabbit named Usagi Yojimbo. And as I fell asleep that Christmas Eve night, I wondered would I be getting any more guys that he could battle with. Fast forward to Christmas morning, and I don't want to go into too much detail here because I'm going to do a full video soon on Christmas memories like this one, but needless to say, I tore open 2 more packages containing Rat King and Genghis Frog. And the battles that ensued between these 3 little action figures, which couldn't even fully stand up in the deep shag carpeting of my grandparents' house, it stuck with me for life as a core memory that likely, actually definitely, helped me navigate a split Christmas that year. And another memory that comes to mind involves me getting picked on after school one day. You know, nothing too serious in the world of jerks and bullies, but enough to have me feeling bummed as I walked home that day. But what was waiting for me when I got home that day, besides a pitcher of Kool-Aid and a box of Cheez-Its? The Disney afternoon, specifically DuckTales. And sitting in front of that old TV, my cares left me as I laughed at Scrooge and Launchpad. And DuckTales remains one of my favorite cartoons of all time, and now I understand why. Within my line of work, I've seen how objects and memories and experiences like these can connect to healing. And that's why when I hear someone say that nostalgia is mostly about avoidance, running away from your current life, I tend to disagree. Because to me and many others, nostalgia is also about acknowledgement and reassurance that I'm still here. Now, let's take some time to look at how nostalgia connects to pop culture and collecting and escapism overall, because honestly, that could be like a fundamental mission statement for this channel. Because the sound of Mario collecting coins, or the click of a VHS tape when it's done rewinding, or the taste of a big bowl of Lucky Charms, these things are all like sensory time travel. And I like to think about collecting as something beyond hoarding. Right? I don't see it that way at all. How's this? Collecting is like curating your own personal museum of meaning. Yeah, I like that better. Each object, every piece, it speaks to you It says, "This happened. I remember." And escapism gets a bad rap in my opinion, when actually, when used mindfully, it can be adaptive. Watching an old cartoon because you need a reset is different than hiding from your life. And think about the guy you know who spends his entire weekends on the golf course, or builds his vacations around the casino. And not to take this to too much of a dark place here, but think about the people that use coping mechanisms involving drugs and alcohol as a means to mask the issues that they're facing in their lives. And if you're out there fighting any of this stuff, just know that you're not alone in that, like at all. Back pain happens. High blood pressure happens. So does depression. So does anxiety. And I've placed a few resources in the description if you're ever feeling like you're at that point where you could really use some help tackling some of this stuff. But the Enjoy Life section of my ending message each video is about finding something in your life that of course brings you joy, but that also allows you a responsible reprieve from some of the most challenging aspects of the world. And that can be anything really, as long as it's not counterproductive. Like I've said before, we handle our business, right? We take care of our families and our loved ones. We take care of ourselves and our responsibilities. And part of self-care is leaving room after your priorities are properly set and properly met for the toy department in your life. For us, it's all of these things that we talk about all the time. For others, it could be outdoor activities or travel or sports or whatever the case may be. Because let's be honest, there's a lot going on. And unfortunately, in my opinion, everything that's going on is thrown on our faces constantly. And not to get off on too far of a tangent here, but as humans, I don't think we benefit from having everything all the time in our faces. To the point where if you're like me, you end up deleting certain things off of your phone and just switching the TV off. And full disclosure here, I find myself getting sucked back into that vortex from time to time. And that's exactly what some of this stuff is, a vortex. You scroll and scroll, you read and read. You start feeling argument in your heart and a general disdain for other people. Like I said, this video is not about advice, but it is about me sharing some of my own personal experiences as they relate to nostalgia and my own mental health. And when I find myself caring a little bit too much about what someone else said or what they think and how could I possibly be wrong here and how could you possibly be right here, it fills my valuable headspace with things that honestly don't belong there. So, do I escape in those situations? Yeah, I guess so. I find myself reaching for simplicity and comfort. An old episode of Growing Pains or a quick run-through of Excitebike. And before you know it, like magic, I feel a little bit better. So when we say things like relax and enjoy life and be kind, I think you can kind of see where I'm coming from with those things. But let's get back to pop culture and nostalgia. And we've talked before about how the link between the two is powerful, and companies know it. Nostalgia sells, and I think that the connection to our memories and the way that connection makes us feel in this crazy, busy, overstimulated world is why it sells. So, am I an easy target for this type of marketing? Of course I am. And are there people out there who might look down on adults who purchase retro and vintage toys and watch old movies from 1985 that they've seen 100 times? Absolutely. Do I care what they think? Not really. Now, let's talk about what all of this looks like in real life, especially when you're feeling stressed, disconnected, or uncertain. When can nostalgia help? Well, maybe you're going through a transition, like I mentioned before, moving, a job change, a shift in a relationship status, whatever. Nostalgia and all of its various tokens can remind you that you have roots, that you have a story. Or if you're ever feeling lonely or isolated, nostalgia in all the various forms that we've talked about can remind you of your place, of your belonging. And when you're trying to reconnect, collecting things and revisiting memories and sharing all of this stuff with like-minded people, that can provide continuity in a day and age where that can be hard to maintain. On the flip side, when should we be cautious with our nostalgia? Well, to start, if we find ourselves only living in the past and actively avoiding present day, or if we notice that our nostalgia is actually stirring up more regret than it is providing comfort. And finally, let's go through just a couple of strategies. Again, not advice, just some things that work for me. Consider pairing a nostalgic activity with a tiny little present day goal. For example, watch an episode of Family Ties, but then sit down and pay those bills. Or, if you operate better under self-reward, get the lawn done and then go watch Goonies. Think about sharing your memory with another person. I'm obviously big on that around here, but connection in these moments amplifies the benefits. And look for your why behind the nostalgia. What does it remind you of? Safety, comfort, joy, identity? Being a little bit self-aware in these situations can be helpful. And always try to remember, nostalgia can be a tool, but it can also be a trap. It's never going to fix everything. But when engaged intentionally, it can remind us of who we are and who we've always been. Now, this video has gone on for quite some time now. Not exactly an episode of today's time capsule, right? But I really appreciate you all listening as I talk this out. This is more helpful for me, honestly, than it is for any of you. I promise you that. So let's get to the old bottom line, right? Get to the point already. We love old arcade games. We love vintage lunchboxes featuring our favorite characters. And we're happy when we hear an old Saturday morning cartoon theme song. And chances are, we love these things because they feel safe, right? They feel true. So if you have a favorite object, or show, or memory that lights you up on the inside, take a moment this week. Get it out, watch it, revisit it, feel it. And then take it a step further by making a mental note about your mood or your overall well-being in that moment. And you can even do like I do and jot it down. Write down something that shifted your day from just okay to awesome, or from terrible to just okay. There's value in that too. And then do the same thing with the stuff that does just the opposite. Like, man, I shouldn't have honked at that guy that cut me off on accident. Now my day is ruined. That stuff happens too. Make a note of it, either mental or physical. And then eventually, make sure that your good column is twice as long as your bad column. Nostalgia does that for me. Hopefully it does for you too. If you've made it this far, thanks again. Seriously, I appreciate you being here. We're taking the kids to Disney World next week, so I'll come back with some really fun footage and some updates for you guys from our trip. But for now, and as always, relax. Enjoy life and be kind. We'll see you in the next one.